I never thought I'd find myself narrating my own downfall and subsequent revenge like a twisted, real-life fable. But here I am, typing out every gut-wrenching detail. I'm not proud of the past. I'm just relieved it's behind me. My story begins when I married for love, for stability, and for a future that promised happiness. I trusted my wife with every part of my life, never suspecting that behind her gentle smile and reassuring words lay a secret that would shatter everything I believed in. When we married, I thought we were an ordinary couple building an ordinary life. We had our fair share of small arguments and everyday miscommunications, but nothing that made me doubt her. Things took a dramatic turn when we decided to start a family. I remember the excitement that bubbled up inside me when I learned I was going to be a father. I envisioned our child as a symbol of our love, a bridge between our hearts. But even in those moments of joy, a peculiar tension simmered under the surface, a tension I was too naive to comprehend. After our baby was born, my wife seemed to change. I noticed she became more distant, more secretive. At first, I attributed it to the overwhelming responsibilities of motherhood. Sleepless nights, endless feedings, and the sheer exhaustion that accompanies a newborn can alter anyone's demeanor. I thought she was merely coping in her own way. But as weeks turned to months, that subtle distance grew into a yawning chasm. It all came to a head one afternoon when I was tidying up. While preparing lunch, I decided to help by organizing her handbag, a small act of service that I had often done in the past. I was looking for her car keys and reached inside only to find a box of condoms hidden in a side pocket. My heart pounded as I stared at the evidence. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. The realization that my wife had been unfaithful hit me like a freight train. I couldn't recall any hints, any explicit signs that pointed to her betrayal. Yet there it was, staring at me in cold, inescapable reality. I confronted her that evening. I remember the way the room felt stifling, as if every breath was weighted with tension. I asked her about the condoms. At first, she stuttered and denied it, but I could see her eyes avoid mine. Eventually, she muttered something about compensation for the sacrifices she had made by bringing our child into this world. In her twisted logic, she believed that the physical betrayal somehow made up for the burdens of motherhood, a notion so alien to me that I could barely process it. I felt betrayed, not just as a husband, but as a father who had invested his heart into a family that was supposed to be built on trust. I couldn't forgive her. The idea that she would use our baby as a bargaining chip in her extramarital escapades was a wound too deep to heal. I decided then and there that I wouldn't let her get away with it. I wouldn't allow her to tarnish our child's life with her deceit, nor would I live in a world where she could treat our family like collateral. The days that followed were a whirlwind of investigation and cold planning. I began documenting everything. I retrieved phone records, emails, text messages, every scrap of digital communication that hinted at her secret life. I went through our shared photos and personal diaries, piecing together a timeline of her betrayals. It wasn't an easy task. Every piece of evidence was like a small piece of a jigsaw puzzle that, when assembled, painted a clear picture of her deception. I discovered that she had been meeting her lovers in clandestine rendezvous, all the while maintaining the facade of a loving wife and caring mother. I made copies of every message, printed out every email, and even recorded some of our conversations when she was not aware. I turned my grief and fury into meticulous documentation. This wasn't about vengeance for the sake of being vindictive. It was about protecting my child and reclaiming my dignity. I had to be methodical and precise. Any mistake could jeopardize everything I was working towards. The first step in my plan was to confront her in a way that left no room for denial. I arranged a meeting with her closest friend, a confidant she had mentioned several times. Over a quiet cup of coffee in a little-known diner, I laid out the facts. I showed her the evidence without malice, simply as a matter of truth. Her reaction was a mix of shock and a quiet resignation, as if she had seen this coming all along. That conversation confirmed my suspicions further. Not only was my wife unfaithful, but her network of deceit was larger than I had ever imagined. Armed with my documentation, I went to our lawyer. I explained the situation calmly and clearly, providing every scrap of evidence I had painstakingly gathered. I demanded full custody of our child, arguing that my wife's actions endangered not only our marriage, but the very stability of our child's life. I wasn't interested in any settlement or compromise. I wanted complete separation and a guarantee that my child would grow up in a secure and loving environment. I wasn't going to let her ruin our child's future with her betrayals and careless choices. The legal process was grueling. My wife's defense tried to twist the narrative, portraying her actions as a misguided attempt at liberation and compensation for the burdens of motherhood. They argued that she was simply trying to assert her independence in a world that often undervalued women's sacrifices. But I wasn't buying it. I provided my lawyer with every detail: the clandestine meetings, the hushed phone calls, the physical evidence of her duplicity. The court was presented with an unassailable case, one that left little room for alternative interpretations. I remember sitting in the courtroom, feeling every bit of the tension that had built up over the past months. The judge, a no-nonsense figure, listened intently as both sides laid out their cases. When it came time for the verdict, I barely dared to hope. The silence in the room was deafening as the judge finally spoke. In a clear, measured tone, he ruled in my favor, granting me full custody of our child and ordering a fair division of our assets. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was the culmination of months of relentless pursuit for justice. The victory was bittersweet. While I celebrated the fact that our child would now be safe from the poison of my wife's deceit, there was a lingering sorrow for the family I had once known. I wasn't celebrating the end of our relationship, I was celebrating the reclamation of my dignity and the safety of my child. I made sure that the custody arrangement included rigorous checks to ensure that my ex-wife would never again have unsupervised contact with our baby. I couldn't forgive her, not even in my heart, and I wasn't about to let her undo the hard-fought progress I had achieved. In the months that followed, I worked tirelessly to build a stable life for my child and myself. I moved into a small apartment that I could call home, a space where our new life could begin without the shadows of the past looming over us. I sought therapy to deal with the emotional fallout, not because I needed to forgive, but because I needed to heal. Every day was a reminder of the betrayal I had suffered, but also of the strength I had discovered in myself. I learned to trust again, not in others, but in my own judgment and resilience. I kept a low profile, focusing on providing a nurturing environment for my child. I became more involved in parent-teacher meetings, extracurricular activities, and even started a small support group for fathers who had been betrayed in similar ways. It was cathartic to share my story and see that I wasn't alone. The support group wasn't about sympathy, it was about empowerment. I wanted every man who had been hurt by infidelity to know that they could reclaim their lives, that they could fight back and win. One evening, while reviewing some old documents for the support group, I came across a note that my ex-wife had scribbled in a hurried hand, a note that mentioned a meeting with one of her lovers on the day of our baby's birth. The revelation stung anew. How could she be so callous as to think that our child was merely a bargaining chip in her twisted sense of compensation? The more I read, the more I realize that her affairs weren't driven by passion or genuine affection. They were calculated moves in a game where she believed she was entitled to rewards for her sacrifices. This further solidified my resolve to never forgive or forget. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. In the wake of such betrayal, forgiveness might have been the path of the weak, an easy out for someone who wanted to move on without acknowledging the full extent of the damage. I couldn't allow that luxury. Forgiveness would have meant condoning her behavior, and I wasn't about to let that happen. My actions, my pursuit of justice, and the final outcome in court were all the retribution I needed. My ex-wife had gambled with my life, and I had taken back everything that was rightfully mine. As the years went by, my child grew and thrived in an environment free of the toxic influence of betrayal. I maintained a strict schedule for visitation and communication with my ex-wife, ensuring that every interaction was mediated and recorded. I wasn't interested in reconciliation or second chances. I was determined to keep my child's life as stable and secure as possible. Every time she tried to contact me without prior arrangements, I reminded her that the past was not open for negotiation. I found solace in the fact that justice had been served in a manner that left no room for ambiguity. Every step I took, every legal document signed, every statement given, was a testament to the power of standing up for oneself. I had transformed my personal tragedy into a mission to ensure that no other father would be forced into a position of silent acceptance when faced with betrayal. The support group grew, and I found that my story resonated with many. Men who had been dismissed or belittled for their pain finally felt understood. We shared strategies for coping, for fighting back in a world that often made us feel powerless. In that solidarity, I discovered an unexpected source of strength. Looking back, I realized that the journey was as much about reclaiming my identity as it was about protecting my child. I wasn't just fighting a legal battle, I was fighting for my sense of self-worth. Every piece of evidence I had gathered, every tear shed in the dead of night, contributed to a victory that was personal and profound. I learned that revenge isn't about burning bridges or exacting unspeakable punishments. It's about restoring balance and ensuring that truth prevails. I wasn't out for blood, I was out for justice, and in that pursuit, I found a peace that was all my own. My ex-wife's life, on the other hand, became a stark reminder of what happens when betrayal goes unpunished. She faded from the life she once led, a shadow of the person who had so brazenly thought she could escape accountability. Her attempts to rebuild were met with constant reminders of her past. I made sure that every official record, every court document, contained the details of her actions. Not out of spite, but as a warning to anyone who might think of using their family as collateral in a game of self-interest. In the end, I emerged not as a victim, but as a survivor. A man who had taken the reins of his destiny and refused to be defined by the actions of someone else. My journey wasn't easy, and there were moments when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. But I held on, fueled by the desire to give my child the future that I had been denied. I stand here today, not asking for forgiveness, not seeking redemption, but simply acknowledging the hard truth that life sometimes requires us to make the most painful decisions to preserve what is sacred. This is not a story of dramatic romance or tearful reconciliations. It's a story of cold, calculated resolve and a relentless pursuit of justice. I learned that trust, once shattered, can never be fully restored. And in a world where betrayal can come disguised as a sacrifice, I chose not to forgive, but to fight back. I have no regrets about the choices I made. Every step, every painstaking piece of evidence, every courtroom battle was necessary to reclaim what was mine. I have my child, my dignity, and the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered the most. Now, as I write this, I do so not in bitterness, but in quiet determination. I hope my story serves as a reminder that justice is attainable if you're willing to fight for it. I will forever carry the scars of that period in my life, but they are also badges of honor. They remind me that even when life is marred by deception and betrayal, one can rise above it all with unwavering resolve. I share my story to give hope to those who feel powerless, to those who have been betrayed by the people they trusted most. My journey is a testament to the fact that revenge isn't about chaos. It's about reclaiming your life, piece by piece, until you've restored everything that was stolen from you. And as I watch my child grow up in a world free from the shadows of deceit, I know that every sacrifice, every sleepless night was worth it. I didn't forgive, and I never will. I simply ensured that justice prevailed, that the truth was heard, and that my child's future remained untainted. Today, I look back on that dark period as a turning point. I am not defined by the betrayal, but by the courage to face it head-on and the strength to rebuild. I am living proof that sometimes the only way forward is to fight, to expose every lie, and to reclaim your life no matter the cost. And in doing so, I found that true freedom from the chains of betrayal and the unyielding determination to protect what matters most. This is my story, a story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate triumph. I have no illusions about the pain it caused, but I also have no regrets. I did what had to be done. I won back my life, and I won full custody of my child. And in that victory, I found not only justice, but a future where the truth remains untarnished and the scars of the past serve only as a reminder of my strength. Every moment, every decision, every act of defiance in that tumultuous period was driven by one simple truth. I would never allow betrayal to define my destiny. I learned that in a world where trust can be so easily shattered, it is our duty to stand up for what is right, to protect the ones we love, and to ensure that justice is not merely a word, but a living, breathing reality. My life may have taken a drastic turn, but in the aftermath, I emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. Now, as I continue on this journey, I remain ever vigilant, ever determined to create a safe and honest future for my child, a future unblemished by deceit. I share these details not to boast, but to remind every betrayed soul that while forgiveness may be a luxury some choose to give, there is also honor in fighting for what is just and rightful. I fought for my child, I fought for my dignity, and above all, I fought for the truth. And in the end, that truth set me free.